Welcome to Surface Interval Diving. I'm Rick, and behind the camera is my dive buddy Tristan, and together we are going to talk today about dive planning. The dive starts before we actually get to the dive site or even get into the water. We start thinking about the dive way before that. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing a dive off of Miami on a Rex site artificial reef called the Rex Baer. Rex Baer is a 225-foot freighter, was sitting around the Miami River for a long period of time in the late 80s, early 90s until they decided to turn it into an artificial reef, and was sunk off of Miami in 1994, I believe. So that said, we know the wreck is sitting in 230 feet of water. How do I know this? I've dove this wreck before. Last time I was on the wreck was July 4th, 2015. So it's been 6 years almost since I've been there. Looking forward to coming back tomorrow and seeing what it looks like. Last time I was there, she was sitting upright. Not a lot of coral growth on her. Pretty intact actually for a wreck site being underwater for so long. Lots and lots of fish, big fish, little fish, barracuda, bull shark. So it's fun to get on these deeper sites because there tends to be more things to see. So now, as we progress our dive plan, we need to think about how long are we going to stay and how much time are we going to have to give to the decompression side of the dive, and how long are we going to be in the water before we're out of the water. Fortunately, I've done this dive before, and I've done a lot of other dives in this depth range, so I've got a pretty good idea about how much gas I need to carry for the dive, how long I can be down, and what my decompression strategy ought to be to come out of the water. Here you see the homework done in pre-dive planning. You see my wet notes off to the left with 2 decompression plans for 2 different run times. And off to the right, there's my gas management, gas calculations. So for tomorrow, I'm going to dive a back gas mixture of 15-55. That's 15% oxygen, 55% helium, and the balance is nitrogen. I like this mix. It's a little leaner than the more typical 18-45, but I'm diving with a clearer head. Probably going to pay a price for a little more time in the water in Deco, but I'm happy to make that make that concession. Likely we're going to do 20 minutes on the site. Again, that comes from previous experience. I've run the numbers, and diving open circuit with a pair of LP85s pressed up properly, I've got about 225 cubic feet of gas, and I can go into the gas strategies here in a minute. But the bottom line is I've got gas for up to 25 minutes comfortably. Beyond that, I'm pushing it a little bit. But being we've not been back in a while, Alex and I are probably going to look at a 20-minute bottom time. That said, we're going to go into the water with a contingency. If the conditions are spectacular, if we land right on the wreck site without any problem, everything is going good, we're breathing well, our sac rate seems comfortable, we're watching our SPG, and we're seeing that we're doing really well on gas, we can extend 5 minutes. Now I'm going to show you later, this 5 minutes of extra time in the bottom is going to cost us 15 minutes in decompression and additional time to get out of the water. Part of your dive plan is a successful drop to your site, knowing you can actually get to where you want to go. And that's where your captain and crew becomes part of your dive team. It's really important to have good communication and share your plan with the topside crew so that you can let them help you get to where you want to go. So this wreck site, sitting in 230 feet of water, lies west to east. The bow is pointing to the west, the stern is to the east. The ocean currents this time of year are going to range anywhere from a half a knot to maybe as much as 3 knots north. So we want to get dropped down here, about 300 feet south of the site. If the current's a little heavier, maybe even 350, 400 feet from the site. And then it's up to us to descend as a team and get into the 150 to 180 range soon enough to see the wreck site and scooter over to it. This is where DPV diving becomes really, really helpful. So often if you're swimming and you're dropping on a site and all of a sudden you look down and you see that wreck site passing below you because the current's got you moving pretty fast, that becomes a problem because you're not going to swim against a 2 or 3 knot current to get back to the wreck. Usually that ends in a sand dive and you're going to have to thumb to dive and do it another day. On DPVs, if we start seeing the wreck passing below us, we're just going to dive to the bottom, get into the lee of the wreck, scooter against the current until we're back to the wreck site, and have a great dive. So that's the plan. Talk to the captain, get him to drop you in the right location. If he knows what he's doing, and tomorrow's captain's a good friend of mine, Jimmy Gadomski, he knows exactly what to do. I'm confident we're going to drop on this wreck and have a fantastic dive. So here's a quick graphic of tomorrow's dive plan. I've kind of laid out the depth and time. Depth is off to the left in the vertical column. Time is off on the bottom in the horizontal column. We're going to drop to a sand bottom of 230 feet. Don't actually plan to go to 230 feet. I'm going to probably try to limit it about 225. The first 20 minutes is this section right through here. And that's where we're going to spend time on the wreck, just having fun, exploring, shooting a little video. We will be on DPVs tomorrow, so we're going to be able to move around without too much worry about the current. It's also a nice safety device to stay together as a team and to deal with any currents and contingencies that may come up. At 20 minutes into the dive, we're going to call the dive. We're going to leave the wreck site at about 180, maybe even 175, possibly even as shallow as 150. There's 80 feet of profile on this wreck site. So if the bottom is at 230, the top of the towers there is actually about 150. And again, depending on circumstances, gas will depart somewhere in this range right here. If we decide to extend, certainly we're going to extend diving in the 180 to 150 range. We're not going to stay deep. We want to minimize our decompression time and move our average depth up. Our Deco strategy now is right now planned at an average depth of 210 feet. Needless to say, if we stay longer but go shallower, that we might move that average to 200 feet. And you'll see shortly how that's a valuable tool in our toolbox, so to speak, to facilitate this dive plan. But sticking now for 20-minute bottom time, we're going to leave the site at 20 minutes, and it's going to take us 10 minutes to get to our first Deco switch and our bag chute. So here at 30 minutes, we're going to be at 70 feet. On the way up, we're going to shoot the bag probably from around 110, 120 feet. And we're going to tell the boat to be looking for it at about 25 minutes into the dive. Plus or minus a minute, that bag will be on the surface. The captain can count on it. At about 30 minutes into the dive, we're going to be at our first gas switch. We're going to go from our back gas to a MOD of 70 feet, a 50% mix, and we're going to stay on that 50% mix for about 20 minutes. Once we get to 20 feet, we're going to switch to 100% oxygen, and we're going to be on that for 25 minutes roughly. So now planning these dives, we got 2 more things we really got to get our heads wrapped around. Gas, how much gas we're going to carry. And remember, we're carrying gas for not just ourselves, but for our fellow team members. And decompression, how are we getting out of the water? What are we going to do to safely make the ascent and get out of the water feeling good and healthy? So I'll make a copy of this and put it in the video in the YouTube channel. You can see this in a moment. This is my handwork I did earlier today in planning this dive. I did a lot of gas management planning to identify, based on my sac rates, how much gas I use per minute at the depth I'm going at, how many ATAs I'm diving at. I know roughly how many cubic feet per minute I'm going to use at any given depth. I use a different sac rate for depth that I do for Deco. My typical sac rate on scooter at depth is somewhere about 0.65, maybe 0.7 on a bad day. In Deco, I range between 0.4 and 0.5. So those two numbers are important because it influences how much gas you carry. We also talk about minimum gas. So we're going to do a dive. I'm going to carry enough gas to get me and my dive buddy from that dive site back up to the surface. That works out to be about 60 to 70 cubic feet of gas that I'll carry to get us both up from about 200 feet. That calculates into the dive plan because I'm going to take that amount of gas out of what I'm carrying in my back gas and just reserve it, won't touch it. That's going to be there for worst case situation. And when that is planned, I also don't plan on that same 0.65, 0.7 sack rate. I'm figuring if we're going to be doing a shared gas ascent, he's on my long hose on the way up, something's gone on, and our sack rate's probably going to be closer to 1. And so I plan the gas management around an elevated sack rate to get us up. So now that we've got the dive plan in place and are pretty comfortable that we've got the right gas for the dive, we need to talk about how we get out of the water. What's our decompression strategy? I happen to like diving with a computer as long as I've done the dives before and I'm not doing anything new or out of the ordinary. Shearwater makes a fantastic line of computers. I dive the Perdix. I've been diving this computer for years. All credit goes to Shearwater for really providing us the right kit for doing what we want to do. I can't criticize this machine. Great computer. So I'll dive this computer and let it tell me how it wants me to get out of the water. I set the gradient factors to where I like. I've set the gas switches where I like. I've got the gases I'm going to switch to programmed in the computer. I've got my back gas programmed in the computer. This computer is ready to take me through my dive tomorrow. But what happens if something happens to this computer? You got a couple choices. I use a software program called Deco Planner. This is a look at the Deco Planner software after all the parameters of tomorrow's dive were placed, and you can see what a 25-minute bottom time looks like with Deco Planner. I spent time earlier today with Deco Planner putting in dives both to 20 minutes and 25 minutes of bottom time. It gave me its strategy and decompression schedule to get me out of the water. When looking at the numbers that kicked back, I agree with them. They're probably pretty good. What's interesting is I've been also using ratio deco in my deco strategies for 15 years now. And ratio deco has always gotten me out of the water safely. Here's the thing about ratio deco. You have to understand how it works and where it falls apart, because it does fall apart after you get much deeper than where we're going tomorrow. And you should use it as a backup. I do. If things really start becoming an issue, I know in my mind, I just did a 200-foot average depth dive. It's a 2-to-1 ratio. I spent 20 minutes at the bottom. That means I'm going to have 2 times that, or 40 minutes of obligation in deco. You cut that in half. The first segment from switching to gas at 70 feet until you're switched to 100% oxygen at 20 feet will be 20 minutes roughly. The second half, while you're at 20 feet on pure O's, is going to be another 20 minutes, plus the ascent to the surface, plus the time of your gas switches. Those are all figured into there. So a 20-minute bottom time, about 10 minutes to get to my gas switch, that's 30 minutes, 20 minutes on my first bottle, that's 50 minutes, 20 minutes on my deco, that's 70 minutes, and another 5 minutes to the surface, 75-minute run time. That's in the computer between my ears in ratio deco. Ironically enough, when I look at the runtime calculated with Deco Planner, I come up with a runtime of 76 minutes. Wow, minute off, not too shabby. This is your other backup. Take your wet notes, put your dive plan and your deco strategy in your wet notes. I've got 2 columns here. I've got 20 minutes bottom time and 25 minutes bottom time. I know what my Deco time is, my ascent time is, I know what my run time is, and that's where I discovered that for another 5 minutes of bottom time, my run time goes from 76 minutes to 91 minutes. Tell you what, guys, when you tell the captain that you're going to be on the surface 91 minutes after you drop in, they'll look at you a little funny, but if you're on your game, 91 minutes, you're on the surface with a smile on your face saying all's okay. So that is the dive plan. That's the gas strategy, gas management, and deco strategy for tomorrow's dive. Tomorrow we're going to shoot video on this dive, and I'll post what tomorrow's dive looks like. Let's see how closely aligned our dive tomorrow actually is with our planning today. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video plan, and I look forward to the next opportunity to discuss our diving with surface interval diving.